We'll go ahead and call this meeting of the Newark City Council Finance Committee to order. I want to thank everyone for coming tonight. This is a committee meeting night for our council. So if you haven't attended a committee night before, we have two meetings this evening. First is finance. We'll go through the finance committee agenda, and then you'll see some shuffling around of council members, and then the street committee will meet after finance. So if you're here for some agenda items on the street committee, that will be right after finance. We do have 4 items on the finance committee agenda, and we'll go through that here in a moment. But the members present for finance committee are Mr. Bubb, Mr. Cost, Mr. Blake, Mrs. Floyd, and then Mr. Johnson in place of Mr. Marmey. And if Mr. Marmey does come in late, then we'll welcome him up here to the committee. Our first item on our agenda for tonight is a presentation from Frank Costel, who's the Deputy Director of Public Affairs for the Treasurer of Ohio, and then also Dan Risco is with us. He's the Deputy Director for Regional Representatives, and also a Denison alumni, so we want to welcome him here too as well. And then and there's Mr. Marmey, so we'll just welcome him up to the committee. All of us, all the members of council and other city officials received some information from the Treasurer State's office probably about maybe 2 months ago or so regarding the Ohio Checkbook Project. And it's a project working with financial transparency, and that's an issue that's very important to several of our stakeholders about understanding easy access to financial information. And so just wanted to give them an opportunity to come and present to us and have some discussion afterwards. So Frank and Dan, if you guys want to go take it from here, I'll go ahead and let you do that.
Yes, thank you, and thank you members of council for giving us the opportunity to come out and show you ohiocheckbook.com. and I apologize, it's loading slowly back here. I'll direct you to it as soon as it loads, but as Jeremy mentioned, back on April 7th, Treasurer Mandel sent out about 18,000 letters to elected officials across the state asking for the leaders of local governments to join the Treasurer's office in the name of transparency of putting your guys' checkbooks online. The state launched their checkbook back in December of 2004 and came to fruition on April 7th to offer the same functionality for local governments across the state. And so what I want to show you today was a local government site and how it works, and then answer any questions that you guys might have. So, 2014, sorry. The state's checkbook came out in 2014. So the landing page just gives you a quick tutorial, which I'll just say get started, but as you guys are well aware, fund accounting differs from your normal residential or home checkbook, so it gives a little bit of background information. So if your citizens like to know some fund accounting principles, it's on there. Take a look at the city of Huber Heights. They've been an existing customer of OpenGov, so their checkbook is up and running. But they go back 9 years with their historical spending information. Same functionality is available to all local governments across Ohio. Just really depends upon the accounting system that the city of Newark uses. So if it's the same accounting system for the last 10 or 15 years, you guys are able to upload that much information. So by going back maybe 3 to 5 to 10 years, you can start to see some of the peaks and valleys of historical trends of spending. It really starts to give context into your guys' expenditures. Have you guys seen the state's checkbooks? I know Jeremy has, but so everything that you see here is the same as what we built for the state. So the easiest way to navigate is a search bar up on top. So this is going to search down through the entities, essentially chart of accounts. So it's going to pull in your different funds and departments as well as vendors. So as you can see, it's kind of intuitive and contextual, so it starts to try to predict what you're typing out. So as I start to type out computer, it's going to bring up some vendor names. And then if I just wanted to search overall into computers, I can just put in computer, press enter, and it's going to search down through all of the historical data. And at the bottom here, once it loads, it's going to show you what departments on your right hand side, the legend, is going to show you for spending in computers over the last 9 years. Sorry, I'm trying to scroll down. Do you see a scroll bar?
What arrows?
Yeah, I'm trying. Sorry, this isn't my computer, so I'm trying to... Is that going? That's going on the data grid. So anyway, the graphs that you see are all interactive, and so you can see you have spending on the left, dates at the bottom, again broken up by departments. So as you scroll over, it's going to show you the information for each department that has that specific expense type. So here we're looking at computers. IT services spent just under $15,000 in fiscal year 2014. We can scroll over, engineering $2,700, IT spent $13,000 in 2013, and so on. So you can really start to see the trends and really start to examine the expenses per department over years, see if it's tracked up, down. At the bottom, and I wish I could get down there. Let me try this. Can I zoom out? Zoom. There we go. You still see that? There we go. So here at the bottom is essentially the checkbook ledger. So this is fully customizable for each entity. So Huber Heights decided to show essentially every piece of information that's associated with that expense. It's going to be in the columns, and that's all here on the left-hand side. It's going to show you what they choose to show. So they've got the account string, the amount type. I'm not going to read off all of them. It's really not necessary, but this is something where if you guys would like to put your checkbook online, you get to customize, and your kind of front page of where people come to your guys' checkbook, you could choose to show the amount, the department it's coming from, the vendor that's going to, and then the amount. So, and then you can come in and include or exclude each column as you would want. So you could grab those pieces of information back in. Let me exit out of here. And please, if you have questions while I'm navigating, please ask them. And
Well, how many cities have your offices worked with?
great question. So we sent out a letter to there's 3,900 local governments across Ohio. We sent out a letter to them, emails, those that we could find email addresses for back in April. Currently, we just hit, I believe, 200 that have pledged their data, that said that we want to do this. They're working through the ways of getting their data extracted and sending it in. It's easier for some that are on uniform accounting networks. It's quite difficult when you get into 4,000 governments. There's a lot of different accounting systems out there, so it's going to be a little bit easier for some. UAN is a product that's put out by the state auditor's office that's quite simple. We're able to export to, but we've got 200 people that we're working with that pledge their data. Another 350 have written in, expressed interest, and are working through figuring out if they're going to do it, how they're going to do it. So the response has been extremely positive.
What's the ease of access of working with city staff in your office to do all this? How's that experience?
It's pretty easy. The biggest hurdle for local governments is your accounting system. Do any of you know what you guys use?
New World Systems.
A New World? Okay.
That's our city auditor, Steve Johnson.
Great. So the New World system, we would probably take a look. We begin by seeing what reports you guys already generate. What are your canned reports? Usually there's a vendor or a check report, maybe an audit trail, something like that. They would try to identify, okay, you might have, there's about 16 pieces of information that you really need for the checkbook. You might have 10 of them, you might have all of them. So if it's found in 2 reports, you can upload 2 reports, and then we can extract the information from there. If not, some folks are doing, do you use any crystal reports or any database query software? So some folks are just simply creating a crystal report, which might take a few hours, a day's worth of work. You do it once, you create that query, you save it, and so every time you want to update your checkbook, you're just running that report again. So we've seen folks do that as well. This is a free program. It's on a voluntary basis. We really stress that it's a partnership with the Treasurer's Office, so we're going to do everything we can to help identify where the information is in your system, help you try to get it out, and then to get your checkbook online.
Is this normally done yearly, or
It's a great question. So how often?
transactions every day?
Yeah, how often do you upload it? So we've heard everything from entities wanting to put it in their monthly closing procedures to probably once a quarter. Some folks have said they're probably just going to do it twice a year, and probably some smaller entities are probably just going to do it once a year when they close out their books. So again, it's a voluntary program, so we don't want to say you have to do it monthly. It's whatever's going to best fit for the local entity.
And like if we've only been on the system, 2-3 years?
5 years with New World.
5 years with New Year.
Yeah.
So do you
Probably.
see a deterrent with that because you said it'll only go back as far as current?
No, it's not really a deterrent. You would just be able to go back 5 years, because most likely when you do a system upgrade, you probably do an update of your chart of accounts, which I assume you probably did 5 years ago. So it would be hard to do any historical data and map that, because it's going to be accounted differently from 6 years ago to 5 years ago. So you probably just want to start when you implemented that new chart of accounts, that new system, you start running it there. Similar issue with schools. So school districts, a lot of their data is only housed on site for about 3 to 5 years. Depending on school districts, they're only going to be able to go back 3 to 5 years. So that's probably going to be the average across the state. It's about 3 to 5 years. What I was going to show you was the aggregates. So this is something, it's a very powerful search query within the checkbook. So what we're looking here is, these are some drop-down parameters. So let me get back to amount. So here we're aggregating the number of checks. Nope, we're still in the count stream. By amount. So this is going to bring up, you can see the first one, the City of Huber Heights over the last 9 years has cut or written 60,000 checks between $10 and $100. This can be searched through many different parameters. I think one of the more powerful is by vendor. So we're going to look at name. So not only does it bring up the count of the check numbers, but we can change, instead of show count, show total. It's going to very quickly bring up total expenditures for those vendors within Huber Heights. And so you can see Tri-City, North Bank 1, a lot of banking, in the $15-16 million, Ohio Police and Fire, Messer Construction, about $13 million. Okay, this is all interactive. So I can click on Messer Construction. It's going to bring up all the checks written out to that construction company across the last 9 years. So very quickly, it's a very powerful search tool within the checkbook. When I say very quickly, I apologize. I swear it's not the checkbook. To get back, we've announced some early partnerships with some other cities around the state. So the city of Stowe, up in Stark County, the city of Findlay was one of the first ones to get on board up in Findlay County. So we're working through, Dan's got some articles just showcasing what we like to do with cities when they decide to partner. We like to get Treasurer Mandel out there and really showcase the leaders across Ohio of wanting to lead in transparency and kind of get out in front and be a leader of this thing. So any other questions? So one thing I will mention, a lot of this is customizable. So you see Huber Heights' logo. The City of Newark's logo can be up there, the columns view of what you want your citizens to see right when they land. Of course, folks can go into the columns view and add the different pieces of information that would be included in the New World Report. Whatever information that you generate would be in that columns view. So it really depends upon the accounting system. You can see in Huber Heights, they do a lot. I think they've got 30 or 40 pieces of information. They include the fund code and department codes and PO numbers, all of that. So, yeah, the check image. Thanks, Dan.
Yep.
So just like what we built at the state, one of the neat pieces is we built in a representation of the check. So the state level, we do a representation, same with the local site. So this is something that you customize as to what piece of information you'd like to see in the memo line. It might be a purchasing description. It might be a remarks that you have in the accounting system, whatever you have in there, you can put in the memo line, but it's going to pull the vendor name, the date, the check number, and the amount. And it's just got the pieces of information that you would associate with it at the bottom, where it's coming from, where it's going.
So there could be a link off of our current city website to go to this.
Yes, absolutely.
So if one of our stakeholders, constituents, says, hey, how much has the city of Newark spent on healthcare last year?
Yep.
They can be at home in the middle of the night and say, hey, I don't know why I'm looking up city of Newark healthcare, but I am, and they could just easily do that. So.
Yeah, a lot of folks have been doing that. So they're building out. We've seen everywhere from a whole transparency initiative on the city's website, where they're putting their CAFR and their budgets and the documents they might already have, but kind of repackaging it and creating a whole web page. Maybe on the auditor's side, maybe it's on the city side, wherever it might be, can be easily linked. And what's neat too is it can be linked internally to the checkbook. So if there's a question such as how much did the city pay on healthcare, you could link it directly to the correct graph, I believe. So it would take them directly to that search query.
Okay.
But yeah, it's
so
also
the graphs like you showed there, and so that's
yes.
all. Okay.
Yep. And on the back end, so there's a control panel here, which I can't show you now. I don't have access to it, but it shows you kind of the analytics of how many people are going to your website. It utilizes Google Analytics, so it can track IP addresses. So it's showing coming from Newark, or they're coming from Columbus, or it's got some really cool kind of analytics on the back end of showing you how many people are using the site. Now, are they coming through the city's webpage, or are they just typing in City of Newark's checkbook?
I see. And then can you also categorize it like by department? Say, hey, I want to look at all the expenditures from the street department. I want to see, and will it show like a pie chart of, hey, this is how much the street department spent on salary, this is how much they spend on benefits? Will it, you have something like a...
You can break it down, yeah, absolutely.
way.
So let me reset it. But yeah, it can be broken down. There's a little drop down here by departments.
Oh, okay.
And so you can look at, you can see again the different search parameters, which funds, expenses, I won't get into that one. But here on the right, we've got, the streets department. It'll load, I promise. So that's where we see the filters on the left. As you drill down some of the streets, so I have one filter. But then if we look at, so they have descriptions, remarks, the local street operating fund, it looks like. I can search for that within streets. And that's going to add a second filter on the left-hand side. And so you can drill down into the departments.
Okay.
Excuse me.
Yes.
So do most of the cities only do their general fund? I noticed that on Huber Heights, I didn't see any utilities. I didn't see any kind of grant type.
No, they would include all funds for the most part. So with Huber Heights, let me get back to the legend. It might have just been hidden down below. So there's a show more. Let me get back. But for the most part, a city would include all departments and agencies. A city would include probably all funds. But again, it's a voluntary program. If there's certain maybe inactive funds that you don't use anymore, that don't have any money that's coming out of them, it's up to you guys to include that. Yeah, we're not here to say you have to include everything. Again, it's a voluntary program. What you would like to show is up to your guys' policy. So there's a show more, so that's where a lot of these, on the graph, it's debt service. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, sir.
For the city to initiate, are we talking about a huge commitment of time for the auditor's department in order to get?
I wouldn't say huge. What I have found so far is a couple hours between maybe a day's worth of work. It really just depends upon if you use a database query piece of software like Crystal Reports and you're very well versed in it. It's much easier, and so someone can knock it out a heck of a lot faster than someone who doesn't use such and maybe has to call their accounting or their software provider and needs help. But it sounds like you guys have a great city auditor who probably can get it done in a matter of hours, not a day. So, worst case scenario might be looking at a couple of days worth of work, not all day, but again, it's a partnership. If you're having trouble, we jump on a screen share and help facilitate it and help out where we can. Yep.
Any questions from the audience?
Yes, sir.
Do you include payroll by department, or is that on there at all, or by individual, or how do you?
Great question. So payroll is going to be reflected exactly how it's reflected in the accounting system. So if you're paying it, I believe, internally and it's a line-by-line check, or if you're batching it together and using maybe an outside vendor, it's going to reflect the vendor in ADP or something like that. So it's however it's reflected internally in the accounting.
It would show by fund, by department.
There you
As
go.
long as you do what the payroll kind of wants.
So not by
That could be made available, and it's probably not something we want to do because it would just take up so much space.
Any other questions from the audience or comments from members of council?
Well, thank you. I appreciate the time and the opportunity to come out and show it to you. So, thank you. Thank you. I'm just going to turn that off. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll exit out of this and close it for you.
Okay. Well, Brian will be up later, so he'll get it.
Okay. Do you need it up?
No.
Okay.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Jeremy?
Yes.
I might have been outside at the beginning of the meeting. Did we talk about costs?
I'll be happy to take that one, Frank. This is free charge to the city. The state treasurer's office will be paying for this, and we will be there to help implement along the way. That's kind of the nice thing about this program is we don't want to offer you to look and go the technology part. We're there until your website goes live. So, treasurer's office is there. We'll be there too. Yeah.
I mean, is there maintenance fees? Is there upkeep fees? Is there hourly fees for having implementing it?
No, it's cost free to all the municipalities in Ohio.
Right. So now until the time we stop using it.
Yeah, there's no contract, so it's just in terms of service. Agree that you can post it, you have the legal authority to. The content's the best of your knowledge, so there's no contract binding or anything like that. So.
Anything else?
That was the best part of the presentation.
Yeah, I know. I should have led with that, right?
Why didn't you say that like 10 times?
Thank you, Dana.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay. Our first piece of legislation this evening is to consider resolution number 1565, appropriating monies for current expenses of the municipal corporation. And section 1 is dealing with the fire safety grant fund for $3,500. And Ms. Gilks is at the podium. Did you want me to move that laptop?
Yeah, that doesn't bother me any. The first piece of legislation is for our EMS grant from the state of Ohio. It is an appropriation for the supplies and training.
Motion.
Motion by Mr. Marmee.
Second.
Second, Mr. Bug. Any questions or comments from members of the committee?
Can I just comment that I want to thank you for your work on the 3 new firefighters. That's a wonderful thing for Newark. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. It was big news. We were all happy about it.
Yeah, I know. Everybody's happy.
Thank you, though, for noticing.
Any other questions, comments from the committee? Questions, comments from the audience? All those in favor of moving this on to full council, signify by saying aye. Aye. Put the same sign. Motion carries 5-0. And then the section 2 is dealing with an appropriation for $5,690.72. Ms. Gilks.
This money is part of a reimbursement from the county for our summer youth program, and this allocation will be going to the Parks, Division of Parks for general service needs.
Motion.
Motion, Mr. Bub, second, Mr. Cost. Any questions, comments from the committee? Questions, comments from the audience? Again, thank you for running that summer program. I know.
Well, I give the credit to Jeff and Chuck. They're running it. I wrote the grant, but they're running it.
So, yeah, doing paperwork. All those in favor of moving this on to full council, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Post same sign. Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gilks. Our next piece of legislation is consider resolution number 1566, appropriating and disappropriating monies for current expenses of the municipal corporation, and these items are marked to be expedited. Section 1 is dealing with the probation improvement grant fund, an amount of $500, and Director Sad is at the podium.
Good evening, everyone. This is a item where a defendant had damaged a scram unit, which is a continuous alcohol use monitoring device. He's been paying it back slowly. It was $1,400. Made a payment of $15 and $500. So we're asking that money be put back in our grant fund so we can eventually repurchase a scram unit that he damaged. So.
Motion.
Second.
Motion, Mr. Bub. Second, Mrs. Floyd. Any further questions or comments from the committee? Questions, comments from the audience? All those in favor, move this on to full council, signify by saying aye. Aye. Post same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you, Director.
Thank you.
Our next section in this resolution is a disappropriation from the general fund of $70,000 for salaries and wages. And I see our police chief is approaching the podium. And actually, both Section 2 and Section 3 are related, so if you wanted to speak to both.
Yeah, we're hoping to purchase the New World Records Management System. We've discussed it a couple times here in council. This will allow our officers to become much more efficient and actually get away from a system that was in place in 1990. One of the advantages to the cost on this is it's much lower because we're working off the backbone that the county's providing. They've entered into contract with New World. Ironically, they got a discount. The county got a discount based upon New World being, Newark being a customer. One of the things that we want to talk about is that it is going to be a lot cheaper for us to do it this way than if we did it as a standalone system. The county will be housing all the servers and things like that. For efficiency of officers, we'll actually be connected with not only the county, but other agencies within the county that use the system. And I just found out today that we'll actually be connected to Westerville and some other agencies in Franklin County.
Chief, can you speak to the reasoning why it's coming out of salaries and speak to, because there's comments related to, why are you moving this out of salaries? Can we hire someone instead of this? Or can you make some comments related to that?
Yes, actually, this is, and what I've asked for, I discussed it with my boss, is that this is actually salaries that have already been saved. It wouldn't matter, if we hired people today, it wouldn't impact this dollar amount. It's monies we've already saved this year. Additionally, we have no current list that we have candidates that are available to us to hire for officers. And actually, Mr. Aletta actually got to hear my version of this before. In my mind, we are hiring officers with this money. If we spend $70,000 on this, we're going to increase the efficiency of every employee of the Division of Police by a minimum of 10%. In my eyes, that gives me 7 officers. We're hiring 7 officers with the same expenditure of money. So we are, in effect, putting more people out doing the work that we're asking them to do by not burdening them with redundancies. And I could give a very long-winded redundancy, but property is one example of that. We take a piece of property in, by the time we put it into evidence or get rid of it, we've done the same paperwork about 5, 6, 7 times, depending on what we do with it. This allows us to do it one time, all the information is populated into all the other things. It's a very efficient system.
So will this software, software and hardware, so will this allow officers to input things from their cars, or will this?
Absolutely. It actually starts from the call taker position, and regardless of where we go in the future with a dispatching situation, this is a standalone system that will work any way we go. So it'll work either way. What it starts is with the call taker, they start entering information, and we get to populate that to the officer's cruiser. This is mostly software. There's very little hardware involved in this because we're already okay with that on that side of it. But when we get the information, and from an officer safety standpoint, 4 officer-involved shootings in the last year, this is important to us because we know that if we've dealt with a particular person that's entered in by a call taker or that location, the officer has that information readily at hand before they show up. So it's very important from that aspect.
Any other questions, comments from the committee?
I'll make a motion. Second.
Motion, Mr. Bug. Second, Mr. Cost. Questions, comments from Mr. Guthrie?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The chief answered the question I had regarding whether or not this system would in any way hinder us if the decision was made for us to keep dispatch within city government. And thank you, Chief, for preempting my question, giving me the answer I was looking for. The only other comment I wanted to make is that these kind of items are items that should be in a capital improvements budget. I understand why the chief has to do what he has to do, but it seems like when we look at items like this, we know, for instance, we have a vacancy, I think it's called a forensic scientist or something, that is just sitting there. These seem to me to be golden opportunities to take a position like that and close it down, as an offset for the future for expenses like this. Thank you.
Chief, did you want to add anything to that?
No, it was marked expedited, correct?
Yeah, this is.
Okay. And one of the reasons, I guess I do probably need to address that, one of the reasons we're asking for it to be expedited is we're working within a very close time window. New World has actually deeply discounted this price, and they want to work within the window of getting the build, what they call the build with the county, with us involved. If we miss that window, our price goes way up. And the window actually will close by the end of this month. So.
Will there also be training involved with this $70,000?
Yes, they'll have people from our place involved in the actual build, so we'll be able to input what we want. As far as for the county, it wouldn't matter for them about city ordinances. We're going to want those things built into it. Any animal control type ordinances, things like that. Property designations. We've got approximately anywhere between 12 and 15,000 items of property currently in inventory that we have to make sure when we build this system that it's inputted the way we need it to be so that we don't have to recategorize that many items. So that's why we want to get in with the original build with the county, and that, like I said, that window closes at the end of the month. The price would probably, quadruple if we miss that window. We
It's a
can.
big discount.
It's huge.
Any, yeah.
I just had
Donna, just come on up real quick, please.
I'm just trying to learn a little bit. You said the system, you input like properties that are attained to.
Yeah, anytime you take
Donna, speak to us and then.
I'm sorry. I apologize. Learning about the system he was talking about, he was saying that things are input and the officers have this information quicker. Wouldn't that make a safer situation for them? So he's talking about 10% for making like an additional 7 officers. But when you have people who are out hurt, like we had an officer who was shot and off work, had he had some of this information before, my thing is, I'm approving on this, is what I'm saying. Wouldn't that make more sense to keep people safer? Am I misunderstanding what this is for? Is that?
Dead on the money.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from the audience? All right, there's a motion and a second. All those in favor of, this is for the disappropriation of the $70,000 from salaries and wages. All those in favor of moving that on to full council, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0.
Motion for the appropriation.
Mr. Bud motions.
Second.
Second, Mrs. Floyd. Any questions, comments from the committee? Questions, comments from the audience? All those in favor of moving this on to full council signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you, Chief. Our last piece of legislation on our agenda this evening is to consider ordinance number 1523 to provide for the issuance of $1,120,000 of bond anticipation notes in anticipation of the issuance of bonds for the purpose of paying the cost of various street and parking lot improvements, sidewalk construction, lighting improvements, and all necessary appurtenances thereto, and declaring an emergency. Our auditor, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you. As you said, this is just a renewal for $1.120 million in bond anticipation notes. This was for various projects that are being done around the city or will be done, such as the West Church 30th Street intersection, parking lot on Mount Vernon Road that has to do with the two-way traffic on Mount Vernon Road in the future. Money to develop a parking lot on North 4th Street behind City Hall where a building was torn down about a year ago. And also for parking and other various activities in the Canal Market area. So council authorized this debt a year ago, and we're just renewing it. And it needs to be expedited because since it's a renewal, we have to pay off bonds on September 2nd, and nothing can happen until legislation's in place. One more thing I wanted to add is you asked me, I think, the last time if the bond was rated. One this small will not be rated, but the $6.6 million that we addressed just a few weeks ago was rated by Standard & Poor's as A+, which had been our rating in the past, so it was continued. And also that $6.6 million debt received an interest rate of 1.2%, which is incredibly low. So I just wanted you to be informed of that.
Thank you for the work.
Sure.
Motion.
Motion, Mr. Bowe.
Second.
Second, Mrs. Floyd. Thank you, Steve, for everything you do. Any questions from the committee? Questions from the audience? All those in favor of moving this on to full council, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you so much, Mr. Otter. That concludes the agenda for the Finance Committee. Up next is Streets.
We'll call the Streets Committee meeting. Members present are Ms. Hall, Mr. Blake, Mr. Rath, Mr. Oleva, Mr. Marmee, Ms. Floyd, and myself. And we are considering resolution number 1567 to vacate a portion, 16.5-foot wide alley as shown on the plat of the John R. Hughes edition as reported in Plat Book 3, Book 13 of Licking County Plat Records located between properties 279 and 295 of Wilson.
Thank you.
Tonight, we have requests for 5 different alley vacations. The first one here on Wilson Street is a little more advanced than the others because we received the legal description courtesy of the Commissioner's Office, so we went ahead and prepared the legislation resolution of intent for that one. The other 4 are not quite as advanced. They are more in the conceptual stage, so we'll have a discussion of those following this one. So the first alley is off of Wilson Street. It's between 279, 295 Wilson Street. We sent out to the request to all the city departments and got no opposition from the police, fire, nor any of the other utilities, street department, what have you. So Deb Adzik from the Commissioner's Office is here if you have any questions what they're planning to do with the vacated alley. One other comment on this one. Both the Commissioners own the property on the west side of the alley. The property owner on the east side of the alley so both property owners adjacent have signed the petition, so there's no publication in the paper, so there would be no publication costs on this one.
Motion. Motion by Mr. Rabb.
Second.
Second, Mr. Williams. Further discussion from the council, from the audience?
Hi, Deb Adzik with the Commissioner's Office. Just here to represent the Commissioners tonight, requesting your consideration of this petition, passing it on to the council. The property was transferred from the city of Newark, maybe a little more than a year ago, and a real successful transfer. The Commissioners used it last winter. It's a couple of pole barns on that site, and the Commissioners used it to store some additional equipment from the highway garage for the winter. But this spring and summer, we've decided to do more with the site. We've been actively cleaning it up. We've put additional fencing around and gating it. We want to secure the site a little better to use it as our maintenance site. The alleyway that's between the 2 properties could use some cleanup, and we want to add some additional fencing to secure the site there too. So your consideration is appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Beth. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries 7-0.
The next 4 alleys, I guess we don't have a piece of legislation yet, but we're looking for, in these cases, is whether we should proceed to the next step and create a piece of legislation. So the next one is the alley off of West Main Street. It's between 108 and 112 West Main Street. If you look at the aerial photo that I sent to you, it actually has part of the building is built over that alley. So the request came from the property owner to be able to clean this up and do some property transfers there. That it seems appropriate that the alley should be vacated because it is not actually being used as an alley. So if appropriate, we'll take the next step and create a piece of resolution of intent for vacating that, present that to you at the next meeting.
Comment from the committee.
We have a lot of these alleys around town, don't we, that are actually alleys but aren't alleys.
Alleys on paper, but no actual pavement or any traveled way in them, yes.
Okay, thank you.
So then you'll prepare a resolution on that.
I will do that and submit it to the next street committee.
Then the next thing is the next page. Next page.
The next alley is off Schuler Street, and it's adjacent to the actual address is 357 Schuler Street. I had written 257 in my memo, but 357 is the address, and this was brought to us by one of the property owners there. We did get some response from a couple of departments on this one. Our traffic engineer points out that if the alley were vacated, it's going to limit some access to some of the properties, homes at 141 Cedar Street would have limited access because of if the alley were vacated. Alley appears to only access some of the detached garages and maybe principal structures. Alley vacation brings up some concerns due to access and parcel layout. And the fire department commented on this one, and they are opposed to vacating this one. They question whether they would have access to the structures, the adjacent structures, in the event of a fire. So they would prefer to leave that one open.
Is this already a paved, or?
It's partial.
Committee? Mr. Ed?
Brian, did you say that there were garages on this alley, where the alley is the only access to the garages?
That's correct.
I would assume that those property owners with those garages are opposed to this as well.
Because we've not sent out a notice to all the property owners, we don't know that for sure.
What's the reason for the request of vacation?
The reason? I don't know the entire reason behind it. Property owner came in, asked for a vacation, and we sent it out to the city department to see if they have any opposition to it. Director Spurgeon, you know a little bit of the background behind this Schuler one?
I do, Mr. Chair. There is a resident who likes to use that. I believe there's a bit of a civil disagreement. Again, for purposes of this body, I would recommend we go on the merits of the Prevention Bureau. To close it down would landlock a spot, and for that sake, fire safety only, irregardless of the civil dispute, I would recommend we don't close that alley.
Thank you, Mr. Bruce.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
It's been my experience that usually if the fire department says no, we usually don't.
Usually.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, if they say no, I mean, it certainly makes sense to. So I think we'll pass on that. Any other comments? Any comments from citizens?
All right, we'll move on to the next one. The next one is off of Clinton Street. It's between 301 and 303 Clinton. We solicited comments on that one, have no comments in opposition to that vacation. That property owner did come in, and he actually previously owned property on one side of the street, or one side of the alley. The other property was in foreclosure, and he was able to gain ownership of it. So the alley lies in between those. He eventually wants to combine it all into one property. So same owner owns both sides of the current alley at this point.
Any comment from the committee?
Makes sense. Yeah, and you haven't heard any opposition from the fire department or anybody?
No opposition from the fire department nor police department on that one, nor any of the other city departments.
Makes sense to go ahead with it, seems to me.
Any comments from the audience? No, let's move on.
And the final one here is an alley off of Woodlawn Avenue. It's between 963 and 971 Woodlawn. Property owner there has requested that that portion of alley be vacated, and I believe it's the property owner at 963 requested the vacation of this. And I know this has been discussed several years ago, and so I'm bringing it back to the committee. The comments that I received from the development department, the alley vacation causes an odd discontinuation of the alley network for one block in a 4-block stretch. They were not in favor of the vacation. The police or the fire department also said that with the alleys have structures off of them, and they also have concerns of access to the structures in the event of a fire, so they are not in favor of vacating that portion of the alley either.
Mr. Johnson. It seems to me this alley goes straight through, and by blocking it off, it would stop going straight through, right?
Yeah.
As well as the fire department says no, and again...
Yeah, the comment of the development department of vacating that half a block portion of the alley in a 4-block section is really creates a discontinuity in that alley network out there.
And it looks like somewhat that part of the alley is used, like there are other structures here that are on the alley?
Yes.
Presently?
I think there's probably some residents here that probably would speak to this one here. We've gotten several calls today, and I know the clerk's office has also. So.
Okay. Committee, anything further?
I would just say, for the benefit of the folks here, this would not be something that it appears as if council would support vacating this, because there's the alley continuation is the first thing, fire department is the second, and the third one, it looks like there's a structure that needs access, a garage that needs access from that alley in order to get onto that property.
Any other comments from the committee? From the audience? Yes.
One thing that...
Would you please state your name?
Oh, I'm Diana Quarter, and we are the homeowners that is on the other side of the... Can you hear me?
Address. Pardon? Address.
964 Fairlawn Avenue, I'm sorry.
Okay. Thank you.
When they did this, I think they have gotten the wrong ideas to what we actually wanted. I have maps if you guys would like to see them. I made you each a packet, because when we looked at it, we noticed it was wrong.
If you'll just hand them all to Ms. Smith here, we can pass them around.
But it wasn't just one side of the alley that we are wanting to vacate. It's actually both sides, because this alley only serves basically as a purpose to our driveways. On our side, when you come from Fairlawn to go down the alley, our driveway and garage is off of the alley. On Debbie's end, it's the same thing. That end of the alley is only used as a driveway to their property. And then the alley that goes this way, we have, that would still be completely open.
The only structures on the alley that we're asking, the portions that we're asking to be vacated between Woodlawn and Fairlawn, are our 4 homes and garages. And the fire hydrants, one is in my front yard at 963 Woodlawn. And all 4 properties are obtained or accessible to any emergency personnel or whatever.
We have also included in here before, when we had tried to, we didn't get this far though, but we had went and all of the owners, us, Debbie, and the other residents there that own the home, we all agreed that, the alley's no problem, and we even went and got signatures from neighbors, which I have included that in there also.
On our end, our house was built in February, well, it was completed the 1st of February or the end of January 2002. We're the only residents have ever lived in that home since it was built. Since we moved in the first week of February 2002, the city has not maintained that alley one time. We have put every dime out of our pocket. We have paid to have it graded. We have paid to have it. Every bit of limestone that's been put in that alley has come out of mine and my husband's pocket. And if it's not going to be maintained by the city, we would continue to maintain that. We don't have a problem, but we don't want to continue to maintain it. If everybody else is going to be able to come through and use it as a drag strip like they do and tear it right back up, essentially. I mean, we have continued to maintain it for 13 years now, 12 years.
13 years. And we've lived at our residence for 22 years now.
And we have, all 4 homes have small children. I have 3 small grandchildren that are at my home quite frequently. I babysit a 2-year-old that is at my home daily. Babia's, which is across the alley at 971 Woodlawn, also have a 2-year-old. The other day, Mrs. Babbia and myself had the 2-year-olds outside playing together. A vehicle come flying down the alley, and it was after we had days of rain, so there were mud puddles out there. And because we've not done anything to it until we see what is going to be done with this process. And a vehicle come flying through the alley and soaked both of the 2-year-olds with mud and water flying through the alley. This past Friday evening, I called the Newark Police Department because a vehicle came from, I know as far as Fairlawn, the next street over. When they got to Woodlawn, they did not even stop or slow down to see if there was any traffic coming. They come flying across, and I'm estimating they were probably going at least 40 to 45. Myself and the Babbias were standing outside talking. We hollered at them to slow down because there was a 2-year-old out there. And that vehicle stopped, spun his wheels, throwing gravel over both vehicles and into our yards, which we have to dig out so we can mow our grass. And I had the license plate number of the vehicle and the location of where the vehicle went on Fairlawn Avenue. And we didn't see anybody, we have not seen an officer in that. When I called, they said they would try to step up patrol because Woodlawn Avenue and our alley are just, basically, they try to beat the lights at 30th and Church. And it's ridiculous. Somebody's going to get hurt. There are several people with small pets. There are several small children. And in our alley, like I said, we all have small children and pets. And we're just afraid that either ourselves or the children or the pets are going to get hurt or worse.
And the only purpose the alley serves, basically, is to get to our garages on both ends.
Mr. Chairman? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Ma'am, I understand your concerns, and I hope the safety forces do step up and help and assist. One thing that you're indicating is that the only purpose of those alleys is to utilize as driveways, but yet you're telling us that continuously cars are going up and down the alleys. And also, as the engineer has indicated, our fire department has indicated it does create safety concerns if they shut that portion of the alley down. This council usually does not go against the fire department stating that they need that alley in order to possibly get to a structural fire in that area. So usually we do not go against that.
But would there...
Excuse me. So, I understand your concerns, I understand where you're going, but I'm going to tell you, you're fighting an uphill battle, and it's going to be very hard for you to get the majority of this council to support, in particular because of what the fire department has indicated. I do understand and recognize your concerns. I do think that, if there's something that can be done to try to reduce the speeding in that area, I think that anybody would be in support of that anywhere in the city.
But we keep requesting that, and it never happens.
And when the fire department came, would it, because they're thinking that just one part of that little section is what they were asking?
I can tell you that if the fire department evaluates an area, if they see that they can't get to every single structure without that alleyway being there, they will say no. And if they can get to a structure in a better capacity, they normally will say no to vacating it, because it will be beneficial for them if there is a fire to save possibly either lives or property.
Okay. Then can you guys start maintaining it? I'm tired of putting thousands of dollars out of my own pocket to maintain it so that it's not destroying our vehicles and tearing up our property in the meantime. I mean, nothing since 2002, I don't know prior to that, but from February 3rd of 2002 when I moved into my home until as of today, nothing has ever been done by the city to that portion of the alley. It has come out of my pocket.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
You can request some patching done to it. It probably won't be paved. I mean, we don't have enough money
We're
to
not
pave
asking
streets.
for it to be paved.
I know, but I just know that I travel alleys all the time to get to my house. And there are a lot of alleys in the city that have lots of holes in them. When the city has time, I'll contact the traffic or the street department and see if they can patch a hole. You need to tell them exact places, like between certain houses, and ask if they could patch that, and they will when they can.
And actually, there's a portion of our website, city website, that you can go onto. It's called See Click Fix, and you go on there and you just write on the map exactly where the hole or pothole is. You click on it, and that goes straight to our street department.
Our entire end of the alley, and I know theirs as well, are just giant holes. And we have asked for those to be repaired, and we've not had any of that done. That's why we have continued to maintain it, because we all have nice vehicles and we don't like to see them destroyed.
Anyone else? Any comments? Thank you, Mr. Moore. I think you'll take into
I think
consideration.
some citizens wanted to make some comments, Mr. Chair.
Are there other comments?
Hi, my name is Tanya Green and I live on Fairlawn Avenue. And my interest in this alley staying open is absolutely 100% personal. I use it. I use it on a regular basis. My home is 3 lots, technically, from where the alleys intersect, and I drive the alley very slowly because it's in such bad condition, so I can't imagine actually racing through the alley, but I use it all the time. And in the last few years, I'm sure you're all very aware, our weather has gotten very strange in Ohio, and we're continually having severe weather. It is not uncommon in our neighborhood where the trees are extremely mature, they're very large. There has been more than one occasion in the last few years when the streets have been blocked. 26th Street's been blocked, Fairlawn's been blocked, 29th Street has been blocked because felled trees and huge limbs. That means my only access north is that alley. This is very personal for me. I have a mother who lives in that neighborhood, and she has a seizure disorder. If there's something emergent going on, and she were to need help, if emergency is on the way, that's great, but I have to beat them there so I can secure the dog. Otherwise, they can't get in to help her. So this is really, really personal for me. That's the bottom line. I've lived in my home for 13 years, and I use that alley. I use all the alleys in my neighborhood. I have my entire life where I grew up in that neighborhood. And I just want to be able to continue to do that. We don't have sidewalks. We do have lots of small kids. We do have lots of pets. I think the perfect neighborhood is full of children, dogs, and old people. That's my perfect neighborhood. Well, when you don't have sidewalks, which we don't, those alleys are great because they are a slower and safer place to walk your pets, to walk your kids through the neighborhood. It's just very personal for me, and I just wanted you to know that. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to speak to this?
My name is Bob Adkins, 1014 Woodlawn Avenue, and I'm Tanya's dad. I've lived there for 47 years, and to go to her house, not all the time, but probably 50% of the time, I use that alley. And I see no reason for closing it. And she's right, the alley's in terrible shape. But how many alleys are not in terrible shape, you know? And I do understand about the little kids, okay? I mean, hey, I would rather die myself than have a little kid run over. But I don't think cars actually speed up and down the alley, but I can't say because I don't live there. So I just request that it stay open for the use of the people in the neighborhood who do use it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Guthrie, then.
Yes, my name is Carolyn Rowland. I live at 986 Fairlawn Avenue. I've lived in this neighborhood for over 30 years. We've always had that alley open. I do agree that on this lady's side of the alley, it is overgrown, that people have not been taking care of their shrubs. They also, I think before she moved in, the previous owner had planted shrubs on that alleyway. So it's very difficult for us to, when we're coming out of our driveways, to go down, to cut across over to the street. It was very difficult because of the shrubs. I blame not her or Debbie for anything on this, but the city did not enforce maybe their codes and regulations on what can be planted on city property. The potholes on her side are enormous. Nobody can even get around that corner and go down that street because you will lose your car. I mean, you're like 10 feet deep. But on Debbie's side, she was very kind. She took, when they built their house, they took and because it became a mud hole, they did take the time and they did put gravel down and maintained it very nicely. The only concern is if they take that driveway or take it for their own personal driveway, it does limit all of us, and it's not only a few of us, it's pretty much anybody who has a garage on that alleyway to get in and out to whichever direction they're going. But it's up to you guys what you're going to do. But we do request it does stay open. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Guthrie?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. One thing that we've heard on several occasions, not just tonight, is this issue, and I think it's a legitimate one, about people using the alleys to avoid traffic, maybe on another artery somewhere. And I just, it makes me wonder whether or not we shouldn't visit whether or not the city needs some legislation regarding alleys defining their use for local traffic only. So that, for instance, police would then have the authority, if they got a complaint that someone was constantly using an alley rather than using the main arteries that are efficiently paved for thoroughfare type traffic. So maybe we have something like that in place, but I don't think we do, that would give them the authority to prevent people from using the alleys if they're not local traffic. So it's just something for us maybe as a council to think about. Thank you.
Anyone else? You've heard various situations.
So the feeling of the committee is to not move forward with any legislation for this alley. Will do.
Other than maybe having somebody fix the potholes.
Well, the street department look at doing some patching out there.
Thank you. Anything else?
All right.
With that, we are adjourned.